out of respect for timeliness, we are going to start. It is 1 o'clock on March 30th, and it is my privilege to have this amazing panel with us today. So I have Vanessa Nicholson. She's Director of Advice in the Advice Center at RBC for Innovation and Transformation. Then I have Ian Tarrant. He's Director Digital Transformation at MCAP. And then I have the lovely Lucy Villa-Flores, Director of Strategy and Transformation at Contact Centers at RBC. So thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to have a great session. We have 1 hour, so I just want to share with everyone the format of today. And first of all, thank you for making time to join us. So we're going to kick it off because we had Vanessa Nicholson in the fall come up with the idea that, this is a topic that is top of mind. And so many people are thinking about it. So she's going to just share a little high level. And then we're going to share amongst the panel. And then we also invite you, our attendees, to share your ideas and thoughts or questions. Okay, so I just want to kick it over to Vanessa and go for it. Share your thoughts and your insights, and we'd love to hear from you. And welcome everyone.
Okay. So I'm feeling the share here. Is that coming through to everyone?
Beautiful.
Looks good.
Okay. So I'm going to start a little bit today with about what this isn't, about what I am not. So I want to lay the stage a little bit that I am not a design thinking expert. I took a 2-day class several years ago. Thought it was really interesting at the time, processed some of it, took away some interesting materials, promised to go back to them, probably didn't, but definitely, in retrospect, after I get into my story here, I took in a lot more of it than I originally thought at the time. And this is a simple story about a simple day in a simple contact, well, maybe a not so simple contact center, where design thinking came in and sort of helped me without me even consciously intending to do so. It wasn't a day that I went in going, hey, I'm going to apply design thinking today and it's going to solve world hunger. It's a day where design thinking came in and sort of helped me in a accidental fashion. After that day, I went through and sort of told this story in a couple of different mentoring sessions, a couple of different one-on-ones, and a couple of people came back to me after the fact and said that it had resonated with them and that it had helped them. So when I was approached for a keynote in a different forum, I came back to this story, thinking that it was relevant with the GTAC audience. I reached out to Sangeeta and said, hey, let's see if we've got an opportunity here. And that's how this story was born. So it was just a regular day, and what's a story without a little picture? So here's my little avatar here. Standard day, I get a message from somebody saying, hey, there's an issue, Vanessa. And there's a little bit of background. We are in the middle of a cloud transformation. We are moving from a premise-based technology for workforce management, and we are moving to a new vendor in the cloud. So my responsibilities here is managing a team of product owners and trying to manage through contracting and implementation, and it's a big transformation for us. We had been on our legacy platform for 20 years or so. So we have a lot of things to unwind, a lot of things to unlearn, a lot of new and exciting opportunities to move into, but there's a high degree of change. So just a regular day, and I get a message, hey, Vanessa, we've got an issue. All of a sudden, my IMs light up. I've got 6 on the screen here. I probably had 10 different people messaging me going, Vanessa, we've got a big problem. We've made a mistake. We've made the wrong choice. Why are we doing this? A lot of anxiety, a lot of concern. My first response Lucy's seen this before. Uh, so, so, I'm in reactive mode. In reactive mode, what do? So I'm chatting back to people. I'm pulling up the contracts. I'm making phone calls. I'm sending emails. I'm booking meetings to dig into the problem and get into details. So within the span of receiving that first message, within an hour, I've probably done all of these things 10 times. I am all over it, got to get to the bottom of it and got to figure it out. As I start talking to people, because that's the first thing, right? There's a problem. You want to figure out what the problem is and really understand where everybody's coming from. As I started to dig deeper into the question and sort of understand what everybody's anxiety was about, I kind of went, hey, wait a second. Why are we doing this? People were concerned as we stepped into a new technology that, long and the short, we'd moved their cheese. In product A, they did something this way. As they looked at and evaluated and were learning about product B, they realized, hey, we're not going to be able to do it exactly the same way. It's not a like-for-like replacement. Something's broken here. And that's not going to work for us because we want to do it the way we've always done it. As I started the conversations, and a lot of them were internal to the organization before I even talked to the vendor, I started poking at that idea and I kind of went, oh, wait a second, why are we doing A? Is A really the right thing to do? As I started digging into that, there was this little tool that was taught to me in that quick little 2-day design thinking seminar called the 5 Whys, where when you start looking at a problem, you ask yourself why 5 times in order to unpack what the problem statement really is and make sure that you're solving the right thing, which is a sort of an fundamental premise under design thinking. In this case, everybody was, very upset because in our world, we had agents entering in their own time exceptions into the workforce management tool. And for those of you in the context under industry, you may be kind of going, ooh, but we did. We had a business reason and we had people entering in their own stuff. In the new tool, that's locked down. We could, or you'd have to give them super administrator access or, it's not designed for agent entry in that way. There's, spoiler alert, we've figured out how to work around it and how to evolve, but that's not why I'm here today. As I started looking at the problem, what did they want? They wanted to enter in their own time. If I ask myself why 5 times, I kind of go get to the root of the problem. Why do they want their agents to enter in their own time? Because we can't schedule it. Why can't we schedule it? Because we can't predict it. Why couldn't we predict it? Because we didn't have the right data feed going into the legacy technology in order to be able to automate the prediction of that work. Why didn't we have that data going in? Because we hadn't done that discovery yet. We hadn't done the application development in order to connect the pipes into the technology. The good news is we were in the process of doing that for the new tool. So when I got that IM in the middle of the day, I had literally been spent all my morning unpacking and trying to fix those pipes. So now in retrospect, I was already solving the issue that everybody was so upset about. Now, look, we're still in the middle of the transformation. Is everybody really happy? Is everything perfect and stuff? No, we've got a lot of change management and acceptance and all kinds of things happening. But, in this particular example, in this day, we were able to sort of go, hey, wait a second. Are we solving the right problem? In the design thinking framework, here's the layout for you. I had obviously gotten really stuck on empathize, right? I got anxious. I was talking to everybody. I was feeding on everyone's energy. As I moved into define, that's when I started to get the confidence that we were going to be able to have a solution to this, and that was fantastic because it allowed me to calm everybody down. We said, hey guys, don't worry, we're fixing this. We may not be fixing it the way you expected, but we're actually fixing the root cause that caused you to do this thing that you wanted to do in the first place. Define was where it's at. As you move into understanding your problem and actually figuring out what it is you're trying to solve, then you can start ideating, prototyping, testing, and you often have to do this a couple times, many times, depending on how complicated the problem is. But what I really wanted to call out here is that we can, we're human beings, so we can get stuck in that sort of emphasized phrase. I think it's very normal for us. And if you get locked in there with all of those feelings, it can keep you from sort of solving systemically what the actual issues are. So, lesson learned, fall in love with the problem, not the solution. Our groups were stuck in a common thing in change management. They were married to how we did it before. We weren't, we didn't have our future focus lens on. So that's my brief little story about how, design thinking accidentally helped me. The 5 whys is really the piece that people came back to me and kind of said, hey, Vanessa, thank you for going into that. After you told me that story, I've actually used it a couple of times, and it's helped me sort of decrease anxiety levels, actually fix something that was real and make a difference. So thank you, Sangeeta, for giving me the audience and a chance to share this little story. I hope it helps somebody. And with that, I can't wait to hear everybody else's stories. And with that, back over to Sangeeta.
I wonder, I was just going to say, I wonder how many members of our audience could relate to that story, Vanessa. I mean, it's just, I think I could certainly relate to it. I'm sure many in the audience can relate to that today as well too. Great story.
Yeah, amazing. So let's see, Lucy, let's see what the audience thinks on
all right.
We're going to just
we want to make this session. Yeah, we want to make this session a little bit interactive. So I'm actually going to ask you guys to participate here. We've got a Slido poll. Let me just share my screen. And if you can join us on Slido, that's slido.com. You can all see that. And the participant code is GTACC, GTACC. So if you can please all log on to slido.com, enter the participant code. We've got a very quick poll. Just wanted to poll the audience. Get your thoughts on design thinking. Ollie will activate that. And the question is, what is the first word that comes to mind when you think of design thinking? All right, if we can get people logged in. I know I'm asking you to do some work here, but let's try to make this interactive as possible. User, okay. Innovative strategy, organized, solution, brainstorming. Thing. Improvement, that's a good one. Process, cognitive.
Oh,
right,
good
more
one.
participants joining here.
Yes.
Experimentation. Agile. Okay. Oh, we see some more responses. Innovative and user are coming up. Collaborative.
Great words.
Great words. Yeah, I was just going to say, really good.
That's great. We'll keep this running a little bit longer. We'll keep this open as well as you listen to our session today if you want to add anything else. But I think that's good.
Okay. Let's see what else. Any other words coming in here?
Forward thinking. People. Problem solving.
Anything around failure? Nope. So that leads me.
Can't learn. You can't learn without failing, right, Sangeeta?
Yeah. So I want to ask that question. I want to ask Ian, if you can just kick it off. When have you failed fast?
Well, generally every day, at least 3 or 4 times a day. But I can certainly think of one particular story that I think resonates. that may resonate with the audience. So one of the sort of the key tenets of design thinking is around that prioritizing, prioritizing the consumer's needs above all else. And I saw the word in the word cloud. I saw the word user, which really sort of made this story sort of come to mind. A couple of years ago, we were on the cusp of revising or putting together a new release of our customer facing portal, the self-serve part of our service delivery that we give our homeowners at MCAP. And we had put together this wonderful new release, great new functionality for our customers, and we thought it was absolutely amazing. And so when we went to release the update, which was in the fall, I think it was fall 2 years ago, we had gone through the process of, we were all excited about launching this new functionality. And what had happened is that the one sort of key aspect of the launch was that we were changing the URL for our customers to be going into and accessing all their information around their mortgage and everything else. And so we didn't realize at the time that one little tiny change would cause us a landslide of issues. And what those issues were people went, obviously they had saved their previous login credentials, they'd saved it on the previous site, and then when they moved to their new site, they had to log in once again. And what we found is that what we discovered is that our password recovery process was certainly not where we needed it to be. And so we went through a significant time where a lot of our agents in our contact center environment were getting tons of calls relating to, I can't log in, I can't get in. So the failure for us was that we had delivered something that was so breakthrough for us in terms of the quality of the self-serve experience we were providing our customers, but the very basic foundation of being able to get into this, was causing us a lot of stress. And I'd suggest the key learning for us was truly, and we'd started a lot of initiatives prior to that around garnering the voice of the customer, and I think the failure in relation to this situation was that we hadn't sort of learned the lessons that we had already begun in terms of listening to our customers and making sure we're doing the testing with our users, with our end users, which are, once again, that word user, when I saw it in the word cloud, really stuck out to me. And I think that piece was really our learning in terms of that failing piece. We really learned that we have to go out, to our community of customers, and we have to run these things through and make sure that we're not just looking. And it's the old adage of, you can't see the forest through the trees sometimes, and we all get very close to a process, we all get very close to our businesses, and sometimes just putting your feet in the shoes of the customer and making sure we're listening to that voice is really, really important to us. And I think that was the lesson that we learned, but it was a hard lesson for sure. And I'm sure that many of my colleagues, we would certainly be recalling what we went through in that particular situation. So it was a good lesson for us all. Oh, I think you're on mute, Sangeeta.
I should know better. Okay, sorry. So if you have anything you want to chime in, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A or in the chat. And then Lucy, I have a question for you. So was there ever a time when you fell in love with the solution more than, just solving the problem?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that came up as well in what Vanessa was talking about, the problem solving and focusing on the problem instead of solution. Like, I've got many examples. Being in the technology space myself, there is a lot of new, I'd say, products, capabilities, emerging technology within the contact center and the customer experience ecosystem. And a particular example would be, I'd say a few years ago, this was pre-COVID times. We had discovered and implemented a new video conferencing solution that provided more of that point-to-point interaction between the clients and the advisors. It was a great technology, and it was meant to replace the existing telepresence units that we had in the branches, which was expensive. It required hardware and physical space. And so we had discovered this new technology. It was great. We tested it out. The technology was adaptive so that it could adapt to the bandwidth and the network speed, so we didn't have to worry about any lag or jitter in the network. that we thought our customers were experiencing. And then what we uncovered is, and it was a cost-effective solution. It was scalable. It was a software solution so that we can scale it, and there was no dependency on any expensive hardware or infrastructure. And we even went as far as integrating it into our telephony call routing platform so that we had the contacts that could be shared across the channels. Well, the solution worked great for the pilot group that we had. It worked great for the simple use cases or some of the initial use cases that we had. And we went and we trained our agents so that they'd be more comfortable speaking face-to-face over video with our clients. And our clients had the flexibility of being able to log in from anywhere to have this video conversation instead of having to go into the branch, like I said, and having that physical and like sitting in front of these telepresence units. So the solution itself was great. However, what we uncovered was the demand for it at the time. And remember, this is pre-COVID, before we all got used to video, but the demand for it at the time, this was a few years ago, just wasn't there. And so we weren't able to scale it at the time just because the demand wasn't there. You know, our agents, most agents don't want to be on camera, right? They're not comfortable being on camera, having a conversation with their clients, again, pre-COVID. And our clients, the same thing. If there's a conversation that they can have over the phone, our clients weren't as comfortable turning on their cameras and having that face-to-face with the agents as well. And so just at the time that we had implemented, although the solution was great, the technology worked great, it was just, we probably implemented it a little too early, not focusing on the problem at hand at the time. I'd say, like, in retrospect, looking back now, what we've gone through over the last 2 years, video has become the norm. I think everyone's used to video, having Zoom chats and, you know, Zoom fatigue now, as we call it. You know, we focused too much on the solution at the time that we fell in love with. It was a great technology, didn't understand the problem at the time. We weren't able to scale it. And so we actually decommissioned it. We decommissioned it about a few months or a year before COVID hit. Looking back now, in the past 2 years, like what we've seen, I think we need to revisit our video strategy now, focusing on the problem at hand right now, understanding our users' needs, you know, putting our design thinking lens on, understanding what our users' needs are, what are their expectations, and really uncovering, is there a real demand for video now in the contact centers and into the future? I think that's the question that we're asking now. Like, now that we're used to it, now it's almost like it's an expectation now that you'd have it as a service offering, right? So are we ready for it now? Is there a demand now? That's what we need to think about from a design thinking perspective now.
It was sort of the right solution at the wrong time, I guess, right, Lucy?
The right solution at the wrong time. We decommissioned it right before we wrote it. Like, I mean, had we had the video during COVID, I think it would have helped a lot. But, you know, that was the scenario that we had gone through.
I think that's a great example. I mean, I think all organizations, and I'm sure most that are sitting here today, are probably thinking the same thing. You know, you're looking at the latest and greatest and the sexiest tools out there, and I think that example you gave, I think, is a great example in terms of you know, be careful what you wish for, or be careful what you put in place without truly getting that vetting and making sure that this is what the users really want, right? I think we're a great story.
Right. Yeah, and is there anyone else that wanted to chime in where you fell in love with the solution more than solving the actual problem? Vanessa, you want to chime in at all?
Solution, not the problem. I mean, I think my initial story was the story of an organization who had fallen in love with many different solutions to different problems, right? So I think as we move through the course of this particular transformation, there's a lot of that, and it's interesting in the contact center industry because we are so often you know, if you're in a sales space or you're just designing new things, like, it's a little bit of a different world. But in the contact center space, you have a lot of transition, right? You're moving clients and employees from one thing to another, pretty much on a sort of ever evolving loop. And you know, there's always this sort of initial negative response to change that, you know, even some of the folks that have the largest growth mindset have, right? And it's this frustration, and you know, I always have to remind myself that it's natural, and because, you know, especially if you're the one driving a change, you can have this tendency to want to sort of, you know, wrap yourself around it and make it go away. But sometimes what it needs is time, right? People need time to get comfortable with the new solution to the problem. They need time to come to terms with it. There's a bit of grieving for the way they knew, be it the customer or the employee. And so it's funny now that as I watch different transformations go through, now I watch for it. When I see it, it doesn't cause me anxiety anymore. I go, oh, good, we got to that point. Because the faster we get to that point, the faster we can get to that exciting time on the other side of a change, right? Where they're falling in love with the new solution, and you know, they've gotten over their concerns, and they're figuring, oh, wait a second, I'm going to be able to do this, or I have this new feature, or this is going to be more efficient, or, you know, any of the things. I like it when that energy starts to build, even if you're not fully through a transformation. But I definitely watch out for that initial response, which, you know, often tends to be confrontational and anxious and whatnot. And as I said, even the most developed, calmest people tend to have a little bit of it, right? So you got to plan to unpack that.
Yeah. So then, just following up on that, what's a situation where you're surprised by a really unanticipated reaction to testing something in the contact center?
Oh, I'm gonna go back more than a couple of years here, just because I don't want to live and breathe in the one project, even though I'm still in it. So it's front and center in my mind. But one of, you know, I mean, look, in call centers, you know, I think a lot of people joke that it's an ongoing game of whack-a-mole. You change one thing and it pops up somewhere else, right? Like, you know, it's unavoidable. But one of my favorite examples is we were going through a practice where we were moving from tenure-based shift bidding to performance. So, you know, and when you start playing with agent incentives, you definitely have to be careful about unanticipated consequences, right? So here we were, you know, moving towards something that we believed would make agents happier and align to their performance objectives, right? It would give people power and control over their schedule, which, you know, after their managers and their pay is probably one of the most important things to somebody working in a contact center. So we were implementing performance-based shift bidding, and you know, you come up with the different sets of metrics that you think that they need to be incented on, and you know, there's hundreds of KPIs and CPIs, but one common one that you'll look to in the contact center industry is often schedule adherence, right? You know, are you following your schedule? So, you know, lo and behold, this is on their part of one of many metrics that influences where they will rank in their shift selection. And well, they're incented to make this as good as possible, right? So what are they going to do in order to make sure that they conform to that schedule? They're going to start tweaking and adjusting their behavior so that they're able to follow it. So handle time went up. Right? Handle time being on an agent scorecard would probably be its own webinar thing, Gita. You know, everybody trying to manage, you know, sort of the true cost of seconds of workload in a contact center, right? But, you know, AHT was not on the scorecard directly. You know, it was something that was coached to, but again, wanting to keep the agents focused on outcomes and the conversation with the client, it wasn't a direct thing. So, but when we started making this something that was related to their shift, they were going to prioritize their ability to adhere to their shift and have good shift schedule adherence over, you know, even if it meant putting themselves in ACW for a couple of minutes before their break so that they took their break at exactly the right time. So, you know, just one example of many when it comes to metrics, but I think particularly in contact centers with incentive design, you have to be really careful, you know, about what kind of outcomes you're driving as you set those targets, and really remember what's most meaningful to the agent themselves. And in this case, the shift selection is really, really key.
Okay.
I certainly
So
vote. I certainly vote on having a webinar tied to that, a dedicated one. That could be our next one, Sangeeta. I think I think Vanessa raises a great one, and I think that as the pendulum has swung, and it always swings too far one way, for in terms of our organization, it's the experience, the customer experience has been paramount. And for us, that there becomes that trade-off with it, with handle time and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, no, I think it's a great point. That whole change management piece is absolutely critical. But sort of speaking, just adding to Lucy's piece around the falling in love with the solution, I think when it comes to multi-channel, leading to that sort of omni-channel environment, everyone sort of falls in love, or at least at a high level thinks that price of entry is live chat, or chat in some form, whether it be driven through AI, or whether it's a live chat type piece. And for us, in our industry, I think it really does depend on the industry and depends on the user. Getting back to that sort of consumer based piece, is that live chat for us is something we've discussed and debated, at length, because for us, we talk about the mortgage, and I use the oft used sort of gravity and complexity tied to the mortgage, versus, let's say, pizza or something along those lines. And I'm not putting pizza down. I love pizza, but transactional versus relationship. How does how does chat, live chat, or even AI driven chat sort of fall into something that's and I think getting that voice of the customer piece is very, very critical, because we can fall in love with all the shiny tools. We can fall in love with it, and does it really? I think that was just another example I wanted to raise.
yeah, and Paul Camras just wrote in the chat, so I just unmuted him so he could share as well.
Yeah,
Welcome, Paul.
thanks, Sangeeta. It's great to be here. Great to hear everybody's commentary. And I mean, a lot of the stuff that you've already been talking about, resonates with the comment I made. But really, what I've seen a lot, both when I was working within specific organizations or in my current consulting role, we see a lot of orgs that are perhaps to a large degree driven by a technology strategy. And very frequently what I see is that the organization as a whole is focused on this notion of, well, we're going to get this new shiny thing and everything's going to be okay. And quite frequently, there's a lot of underlying stuff, more from an operational perspective within the contact centers or within other operational areas that haven't necessarily been looked at or raised, and so they will continue to exist even after the new shiny thing comes in, and in many respects they might even degrade the experience that people are expecting, just because you haven't really, if we use workforce management as an example, if you're not fully formed within your workforce management practice and you start bringing in new channels that everybody recognizes will be a boon from a customer experience perspective, those expectations quite often can be undermined. Because you haven't necessarily solidified your foundation to support, the expansion of these new experiences. So part of the work that I do really helps. I really try to focus on people getting past the shiny stuff, and just as a starting point, let's talk about some of your existing operational processes, et cetera, so that you can really get the benefit of the stuff that you're looking to invest in.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Do you mind if I comment on that, Sangeeta? Paul, thank you so much for your comments. And I think that when we look at digital transformation, in my organization, it truly, technology is an enabler, and we tend to focus on people, process, and technology sort of being that third component. And what we've done is that we formed what we call councils. To sort of address some of the pieces you were talking about, Paul. We've got what we call the Homeowner Experience Council, which is a group of frontline employees that are tasked with, what are the best possible experiences for our homeowners, but how does that affect the work that you're doing as a frontline agent? And then on the other side, we have a council called the Employee Engagement Council, which is once again frontline frontline employees, frontline team members who are basically talking about the experience of the employee and how that affects the business and how it affects their engagement and all that lies therein. So I think that Paul's point is absolutely relevant in terms of the shiny tools, that technology piece. You have to address the underlying pieces around culture and around the processes that sort of feed into these things, and technology just becomes that enabler, if you will. So no, great comments, Paul. Thank you for chiming in.
Wonderful. So if we just think a little bit, we'll continue the conversation. What has there been any aha moments in your design thinking? Anything that comes across? And Lucy, actually, before we go forward, are there any more words you wanted to share that came from our attendees?
Sure, yeah. Let me share my screen here. All right, so we see, okay, feedback is up there. Collaborative, user, innovative.
I love the
Paul, you had a great question there. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, Paul, you had a great question there. Being on the technology side again, I admit we do get kind of stuck sometimes on the shiny object, right? There's so many different capabilities out there. And one of the things that we've done is that it's a joint collaboration between our technology team and our business team, Vanessa being my partner, is we started an innovation lab for we call it our Contact Center of the Future Innovation Lab, where we're working closely with our business, coming up with specific use cases or problems, and then looking at solutions on how we can solve those particular problems. And so it's going through the whole cycle of, identifying a problem. There's many different solutions out there. I mean, I think there's some great sales teams out there that are always pitching new technology, new capabilities to us.
I hear from at least 50 or 60 a day.
Especially after a GTAC conference, I'm just saying.
Yeah, but what we've done is like the purpose of the Innovation Lab was to allow us to actually get our hands on with the technology. We had our business teams going in, actually building out prototypes. And so we learn a lot from this as well, right? So it's not just what we see on a sales deck or what they can present to us through a perfect demo, but we're actually building a prototype out ourselves, building a demo out ourselves, getting the hands-on experience. And this is through rapid prototyping. So every 4 to 6 weeks, we would build another prototype, work with the vendor, understand it was more than just the technology, the capability. How does it apply to our use case? Will it help solve the problem that we're looking at? But then it gave us some additional learnings on what is it like to actually work with this particular product or vendor? Is it sustainable? Can we maintain it? Do we have the skill set? How easy is it for our teams to learn the capability so that we can actually support and maintain and sustain it afterwards? And so the Innovation Lab concept was really driven from, we don't want to be sucked into these shiny objects. We want that hands-on experience, actually building out the prototypes, using it ourselves, having our users test it as well, and getting that feedback before we actually commit ourselves to anything longer term.
Love that.
I think as Cam was talking there, I also was smiling and thinking about the relationship that we've got between technology and the business, Lucy. So I mean, we went through an agile transformation and really made it very formal so that we've got business representation with all of our existing technology channels, right? So we've got product owners and a real good sort of connection there. It's funny though, when you start talking about new and emerging technologies where you often do get people sort of assigned from the business and assigned from technology to look at it. Sometimes I think we do end up sort of chasing a solution without really understanding the problem, right? Our problem is we don't have this technology. That's not the real problem, right? Yeah. So it's important to go back there.
That's a great point, and I think that people absolutely want a solution. I just think it must be inbred in the human existence that we just want to find solutions to things. And the way we handle it in our organization and partnering with our friends in IT, and it was a complete cross-functional effort. That whole the journey we began with was around capabilities modeling and truly lining up the capabilities that we want to have, and then going through this journey or this map in terms of the capabilities we require and at what what is our current maturity, and what is the end state of where we want to be in like 3 to 5 years. And so that capability slash maturity modeling approach with our IT partners and with other members of the business, really that collaboration, that cross-functional collaboration was absolutely key to developing our digital transformation strategy. It wasn't one group, it was it was many people that got together to go through this modeling process, and it was powerful. But I can tell you this, everyone, and I mean everyone, was going through the process of, well, we could do this, we could do that, and trying to get away from that solutioning, before you truly outline what the capability is that's required is really tough. I think it's tough for people to do, and it's a real discipline when all is said and done.
Does anyone have
really?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just to respond to that, Ian, I think it's really important too, as you set your strategy, to revisit it too, right? Like, because you create your strategy, you come up with this great plan, and you're going out after it. But again, fundamentally, the problems that you're trying to solve can change over time, right? And people get locked into, and a lot of this happens when we set goals and outcomes, right? Like we kind of say, your mission is to do X that year, right? So they don't want to suddenly stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, we shouldn't do X,
yeah.
So.
Well, and this is why the agile, the iterative approach and this is so critical, especially as we find that solutions change and evolve so fast. It's not like it was years ago where you had a certain runway in terms of any piece of technology, but things are just so adaptive and changing so fast that you have to take that agile and iterative approach, or you're doomed.
And what about when people are hung on to the they have assumed truths, and then how that can derail that transformation journey or those transformative efforts? Does anyone have examples of that?
I think for this one, I am often guilty of assuming, because I've grown up in contact centers, right? So I started as an agent, and I 20 plus years in the contact center industry. So I feel like I can speak on behalf of the agents, but the agent of today is different than the agent of 20 years ago and whatnot. And I've had to be really, really conscious, in terms of making sure that I go back and I get real and present validation of the problem statements. Right, because and it's funny when you approach and you kind of I think I'm going to go back to school here, but it's like you need that firsthand research, right? You don't want to get it from a book. You need to get that first account story, and as you go there, it's funny how you can end up actually going in very different directions than you might have originally anticipated.
So that probably is one of your ahas. One of your design thinking ahas. So,
for sure.
Yeah, can we, as we start to wrap up, I'd love for each of you to share some of your design thinking ahas. And then for those listening, if you want to put it into the chat, we'd love to hear from you. So whoever wants to start sharing your design thinking ahas, you can start that process, that discussion.
Go ahead, Lucy, if you're ready.
Well, probably not a design thinking aha, but one of the comments that I see here is feedback. And it just goes back to one of the previous questions about, what was a surprising or unanticipated reaction that we've gotten. And feedback is so important here. And, a few years ago, again, we implemented a new IVR system, which was a fully conversational, natural language understanding, replacing our old touch-tone IVRs. And at the time, the technology is great. The reaction that we got and what was surprising out of that was just the client's adoption of this new capability. It took a lot longer than we had anticipated. We thought that by simplifying our IVR, making it over, like open-ended, natural, so that it was almost like having a natural conversation, they didn't have to navigate through layers and layers of menu trees. They get to the responses and what they needed quicker. We didn't anticipate that the adoption of this new capability would take as long as it did. And it was because like some of the feedback that we got. So what we did was we actually listened to all of the feedback, gathered all of the complaints, the feedback, what were customers' concerns with the new system. And two things that stuck out. One was we had a user base that was so used to using the old system. They were our power users. They knew exactly which buttons to press to get to exactly what they wanted and in the quickest way possible. And so when we switched this on them, they didn't know what to ask for anymore, right? It was just, how can I help you? Well, I don't know how you can help me. I was so used to selecting from options that were presented to me. And so it took a while for our clients to adjust, to know how to use the system, what to ask for. That was a bit of a surprise in terms of reaction there. The second piece was we also had users that said, I don't want to talk to a robot. I feel like the robot is taking away a job from a live person in the contact center. And we hadn't anticipated it. We were concerned that our agents and our advisors would feel this way. And so we had reinforced with them that, the virtual assistant was there to support them, to help augment them. Some of the simpler self-service tasks could be done automatically. And then the agents can focus on a more meaningful conversation and providing more meaningful advice to our clients. We hadn't anticipated that our clients would be feeling like, I don't want to talk to this robot because it's going to take away from a job from someone in the contact centers. And so we had to address that as well. And it was just through continuous feedback, watching the feedback that was coming in. We actually proactively reached out to some of our clients that were having issues or we found that they weren't interacting or they didn't want to interact. And we actually started to guide them through how to use the new system. Purpose of it, how it was there to help them. And if they still wanted to talk to an agent, they could still speak to an agent, right? But it was listening to that feedback, being proactive, reaching out to them, and then continuously improving that process and helping with that client adoption.
Yeah, I like
kind of something that really stuck out because it was just we hadn't anticipated that at all from a reaction from our clients. But yeah, lessons learned.
Really
and
great.
It's good to get continual communication so that you could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my aha moment came about a year or so ago. And I think a lot of it, of course, speaks to the assumption piece that I think that Vanessa spoke about earlier, and some of the other pieces that I think Lucy was speaking to, and just building on that. A year ago, we started a grassroots ideas program. We call it the HIP, which is the Homeowner Improvement Program. The idea was to get sort of ideas straight from our frontline agents around what's happening with the homeowner experience. And it's not like we weren't listening to our frontline folks before, but the idea of putting this sort of formal program together that was done through Teams and Microsoft Forms. It was actually very well designed. And but I think what's really sort of was a surprise for us was the sheer number of ideas we received from our frontline folks in terms of how to improve that customer experience piece. And we had so many, and these were not, and I think some of the assumptions that we had as an organization, that I think that we thought we were going to get a lot of sort of big ticket IT type items that were going to, that were going to take a long time to sort of bring into action. But we got some very, very simple but very powerful ideas from our front lines. Just simple things like, put arrows on key documentation so people know where to sign off on, and things like that. Things that were just so simple that once again, I go back to that comment of seeing the forest through the trees, that I think that we just make baseline assumptions on certain things, and listening to the folks that are dealing with your customers and truly creating a mechanism in which they can either formally or informally submit ideas that can help either their experience, as a frontline team member, or that can help the experience of the end user, of the customer, is so powerful. I still go back to, we ran it as a campaign at the beginning of last year, and it was so effective. in terms of the numbers of ideas that we got through, that we decided to launch it as a permanent mechanism, and not just as a campaign. So it's now come to life as a permanent thing for our frontline folks to be able to submit ideas in terms of how to improve that experience. And the stuff that we've gotten from that, we've certainly gotten some technology, suggestions and some other things, but it's been absolutely amazing. And it's also from an engagement standpoint, our frontline folks feel like they have a voice. And so I think that was kind of our aha moment, really, when it came down to it, if that makes sense.
It does. Wonderful. And then you want to wrap up as we started with you, Vanessa? And anyone?
Yeah, sure. I think my sort of key learning through all of, anything to do with design thinking really is that, look, I'm data driven personally, but, understanding that feelings are just as important as facts when it comes to customer experience and agent experience.
Yes.
And unfortunately, there's no report that you can just click to run for feelings, right? So, you've got to go and you've really got to unpack and collect that information. And, only then can you begin to solve the right problem. And sometimes you can't even get into solutioning until you've addressed some of those feelings. So, and I don't mean to use it in a derogatory way. Like, we're human. We all have feelings about things, even if they're simple. And it could be as simple as a URL change, or, the moving of a button on a screen for a client. When it comes to agents in the center, they have strong feelings about their things that impact their day-to-day lives. And taking time to go talk about your feelings and get people to share and open up, it's as important as any data that you can gather. It's, and sometimes it can be hard because it's qualitative, right? It's not quantity. It's hard to, always turn it into a perfect numerical value, and it takes time, but it's definitely time well spent, because again, it allows you to make sure you're solving the right problem.
Yeah. Anna and the audience agreeing with you 100%.
Yeah. I don't know if I can just add quickly, Sangeeta, that
yeah.
I think that point is so powerful. And we began our transformation efforts with sort of that Peter Druckerism that, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if you ignore the culture, if you ignore those feelings, to Vanessa's point, you ignore them at your own peril, because that will override everything when all is said and done. So very, very well said, Vanessa. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So wonderful. So as we wrap up, and I like to be really mindful of time so that we know their calendars are back to back to back. So we'll give you back 5 minutes in your day. But thank you, Lucy, Vanessa, Ian, so much for sharing. And this is a recorded session, so we'll have this up on the YouTube channel in a couple of days, and so everyone has access to it. It was a great session to get people thinking, which is really important to start the conversation. So thank you. And, oh yeah, thanks, Tracy. Yeah, it was a brainchild of Vanessa's, and it was her initiative. So thank you, Vanessa, for bringing it forward. And I just actually want to encourage that to our attendees. If you have something you'd like to have a discussion on, just bring it forward. And that's how great ideas, and this is like a small little roundtable think tank, and that's how great conversations start. So yeah, thank you everyone for putting in great feedback. If you want to mark your calendars, April 7th, we also have another session with Margaret Suji and Daniel Kovac. You can go onto the GTAC website and register there. And to stay in the know of all things GTAC, just go to gtac.ca and just join. It's free to join, but that way you will still get all the emails, because we don't just take the registrants from here and dump them into our database. We don't do that. So if you want to be in the know, just go join GTAC, and then you can be part of all the sessions. So once again, thank you everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon, and you got 5 minutes back the rest of your day.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Sangeeta.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Sangeeta.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Good, great insights. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Elizabeth. Oh, thanks, Shalisa, Anna. Gee, thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.